Hi, and welcome to the Thriving Entrepreneurs 15 Minutes. She is Rochelle Learling, entrepreneur coach.
Waiting. David Foster, founder coach, question mark.
And yes, we know those are basically the same thing. So today's question is not what most viewers hope, which is who stole the post that Rochelle worked on for so long this morning. But today's question is, how does an entrepreneur inspire his or her employees? Rochelle, start us off.
Well, I think it's funny when we started posting about this topic
Mm-hmm.
that a couple of people already flagged. I think it was Jihane saying that, hey, I'm glad you guys chose the word inspire over motivate. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is where we can start our conversation because we also discussed this. Motivation is just BS. We don't want to go there in this conversation. But as we said, entrepreneurs have to change their role once they onboard a team, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
one employee or multiple. But you are
Mm-hmm.
changing the direction of your company, plus you're changing how you should show up. And that comes with a complete different set of personal skills and a complete set of communication skills that is so
Mm-hmm.
different from how you used to interact.
Mm-hmm.
So that transition is super hard. And yeah, I'm curious to dive into how you can manage that without feeling like it is a drag to be in this position because it can
Mm,
actually be empowering.
mm. So, as a lot of people know, that transition from launching a business to leading one is the bulk of my work. So this is going to be very difficult to
Mm,
fit into 15 minutes.
absolutely.
But you mentioned the difference between inspire and motivate. How do you see that?
Motivate sounds to me like you want to hit a goal and you want to make sure that we hit the goal together. And you
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that we are all doing our best to get to the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Inspire feels more to me like showing direction and clarity on the vision and the mission of the company. And it's, let's say, short term to mid-term goals. Where are we heading together? And how is your role going to be in that? What are your responsibilities in order to make it happen? But also,
Mm-hmm.
how can we make sure that we empower each other to go there? So I
Yeah.
think it's a more strategic way of looking at employees and having a team. How about you?
I the way I look at it is I think that inspiration is internal and motivation is generally external, although there's a big
Hmm.
crossover between those two things. And
Hmm.
I'm with you that motivation and to a certain extent inspiration, can we swear on this? I don't know, is
Yes.
complete bullshit, right?
Hmm.
Because you can't, it sounds like, how do I get my boyfriend to really like Tex-Mex? How do I get my girlfriend to, get excited about my high school reunion?
Yep.
You can't make things happen for other people. And a leader needs three things to get something out of an employee employer relationship.
Hmm.
You you have to know where you're going. You have to know what it is that you are leading somebody to or leading yourself to.
Hmm.
And that you can tell by a story. And when you think about stories, we're not talking about Hansel and Gretel. We're talking about, hey, what's the story with your biggest competitor? What's the story with this investor?
Yep.
You need the ability to communicate that story, articulate it, make it understandable by the people around you. And that's something that you can learn, and that's something that you can practice, and that's something you can get better at. And
Hmm.
then you have to have a sense of, you have to be trusted. You have to do
Hmm.
what you say and say what you do. And
Hmm.
people generally trust other people until they have a reason not to.
Yep.
And it's a very telling statistic that over 2/3 of people would trust a perfect stranger before they trust their own boss. So once you
Hmm.
have those three things in place, obviously this is my opinion, but at the same time, this is an opinion borne out by a lot of experience.
Hmm.
You help an employee align what's important to them with
Yep.
what's important to the business and the collective goals. Because no one does something because it's the right music or because there's something that's externally motivating them. Like, yes,
Hmm.
there's threats, there's sticks and carrots, but those only work short term.
Yep.
That's my compressed diatribe about motivation and inspiration.
Yep. Yeah, and I also think that it's important to mention that when we don't have the skills or we actually don't take the time to really develop them,
Hmm.
we stay in that position of here's the task, go do it,
Yeah.
and that's what you get, and that is frustration and that is distrust right at that start.
Hmm.
But if we can find a way where we even like we look at our employees from a very mature perspective where they are actually the pros, we hire them because they're
Yes.
the expert, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
why don't we treat them with more respect than we should or than we even do, and from that position say, hey, listen, I want you to be at your best, I want you to be operating at your best and highest
Hmm.
performance. So what do you need and what do
Hmm.
you need from my side in order to perform at your best? What is that facilitation that you need? And
Hmm.
if we look at them like this instead of looking like that, I think that could be the difference between inspire and motivate. And motivate is actually, like as you said, external, internal. I love that. I think to add on to that, like motivation is needed when it's too late.
Hmm.
It's already too late to get people to internally to feel that this is their work and to feel the ownership for what they're doing. And if you give the people the feeling that we just want you to fix these tasks and then just get it done
Hmm.
as soon as possible and actually
Hmm.
yesterday, that feeling of pressure and that feeling of I don't like you, I just want you to get it done, like it doesn't work in long term. And I think it will actually enable you to have a toxic culture.
Yeah, very toxic. Karen makes the point that she would expect her
Mm,
team to be motivated already.
yeah.
And Karen, I just want to take that apart a little bit from my point of view. I agree with you. People are motivated intrinsically. There are very, very few people in the world that take a job and say, boy, I'm really going to mess this up. I have a new
Hmm.
job. I negotiated a salary. I have clothes. I'm going to make a commute. And then I'm going to do my worst job possible and make it miserable for everybody.
Hmm.
And the trick, in my mind anyway, is to make that connection between their internal motivation and what's meaningful to them
Hmm.
and what is meaningful to the shared goals of the company. If you can align those things and if you can craft and, as Rochelle says, support that person doing those things, then you have a tremendous amount of engagement and synchronicity. Would you say the same thing, Rochelle?
Yeah, it's actually, hey, I need you, you need me. How can we make this fit together? How can we align ourselves to one goal? And if we don't talk about that, but we just start with here are your responsibilities, then this layer of, let's say, mutual connection and mutual need is
Mm-hmm.
just disregarded whatsoever. So I
Mm-hmm.
agree on that. And I think it's also on the employee. I mean, this comes with experience, but with the employee just coming in and saying, "Hey, listen, I want you to feel satisfied with my work. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to know how can you make sure that I am empowered. But these are the things I would need." And that's maturity comes with experience. But I feel that um,
We can hope that maturity comes with experience.
yeah. But I mean, even the business owners in charge don't often have that.
Hmm.
And it's just a matter of just get it done, and that feeling of not knowing what they're doing, I think that is very much under the service with all these employees working there.
Yes,
So
I agree. I agree.
yeah.
I also agree with Kathy's question or her suggestion of a question to ask, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
Once you have that coordination between what's meaningful to the employee and what's meaningful to the organization, a leader should always almost ask that question. And they should ask that question of the employee, but they should also ask that question of themselves in a way, what can I do to help this person? Because, when you think about you're in a situation and you're working and it's not going as well as you want, you may not know exactly what you need. But if you
Hmm.
but if you have more experience as a leader, if you have more, to be blunt, resources,
Hmm.
you can go to the employee and say, I want to support you in this way. Can we figure out a way to make it work? So,
Hmm.
Kathy, I think that's an excellent point to make. I just want to add that that comes after that alignment of what's meaningful to both parties.
Hmm. How do you think authenticity of the business owner fits into this?
Well, in some ways, that's a loaded question because
Mhm.
authentic to what?
Authentic
And
to their employees, their in their leadership.
Yeah. I understood that you meant that, but it was
Mhm.
almost like, there's you have a different personality for every group that you're in a way. You
Sure.
show things in a different way.
Hmm.
And so, I think a leader really benefits from being authentic in terms of being truthful, but at the same time, having that truth be, let's call it appropriate.
Hmm.
So, one of the great metaphors that I use all the time is like kids. If you had a bad review at work and you're worried about your job and you go home and your little kid says, "Daddy, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm okay. I just had a bad day, but it'll be okay."
Hmm.
But if your kid's older, you might have the opportunity to say, "Well, I'm worried about something at work," or
Hmm.
"That's really stressful for me."
Hmm.
Both things are authentic, but they're not exactly the same thing.
Right.
Does that jibe with what you're thinking about for authentic?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would like to add that because first time leaders really have no clue what is done best in this situation where you lead people. It is authentic to say like, listen, this is me like leading a team for the first time. Maybe you've been in different situations with other kinds of leaders.
Mhm,
What was their best practices? How do you make sure that you thrive? And I
mhm.
feel like that it almost like gives away power, but it also shows power because you actually are being authentic about what you know in order to really make sure these employees are ready to really make it happen.
That giving away PowerPoint, I can't believe I just said PowerPoint. That point about giving away power,
Yes.
really, really important.
Yeah.
A leader should feel that he or she is giving away power almost all the time, and
Mm.
that you still have the ability to make decisions. You still have probably hiring, firing, budgetary control, that kind of thing. But the more people you hire, the more they do, and the more you need to let that go. And that sometimes feels like giving away power. I don't know
Yeah.
who said this because it's coming up as LinkedIn user, but
Mhm.
I learned a new word today, de-bottlenecker,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because when I posted about this live, I said like, how can you go from the bottleneck of your team to the facilitator of your team? And I agree, you can use it in both ways, but it's funny because I think often because we as a business owner don't really know what our employees need in order to thrive, we become the bottleneck for their performance. But indeed, if you can become the debottlenecker, listen, guys, what do you need from me in order to
Yes.
be in a smoother process? Or how can you make this even easier for you? That's a complete change of mind and of working. And
Yes.
yeah, I so agree with that.
Yes. I completely agree as well. And Valerie's sneaking in here in the last 2 minutes. Company vision and mission are undercommunicated by a factor of 10.
Hmm.
100%. In fact,
Hmm. Yep,
that's a whole nother episode. And I would
absolutely.
say that company vision and mission, it's not posters in the bathroom. It's not the 5 minutes that you say at the holiday party. And
Mhm.
it's not some sort of like page on the website, but it's
Mhm.
actually what is meaningful to the company communicated through your actions and your deeds and your decisions with the people around you.
Mhm.
Might sound like a heavy load, but leadership is a sacrifice. Leadership is hard.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we think about Monday morning meetings and we think about the updates that we are expecting here, like, hey, what are you guys working on this week? We as leaders can also take the stage and say, listen, guys, this is what we are working on in terms of,
Yes.
moving forward. This is what we are, busy with. That's what we're not so present this week. Or this is why, we've been kind of worried about the next direction, but this is where we think we're going next in a couple
Yeah.
6 to 12 months, just to give you a heads up on what's happening. And I feel that part is often missing in those updates.
We're at the wall.
Yep.
Last comment from you.
Let me just read this comment first. Would you say this is true because leaves often aren't clear on how to make this tangible? Yeah, but that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. As you say, it's not just a poster, it's not just a website page. That's not it. But
Yep.
definitely a topic for maybe next week or the week after. Talk
Yep.
about how to make that practical. And yeah, yeah, I feel that the more you clarify the vision, the easier it gets to motivate or inspire people in this sense. But I think we should all come from a place of how can we empower them and ask that question, not only ourselves, but also ask them to those people.
Yeah. My parting thought: direction, story, trust, and then you can develop alignment. And that's condensing 100 of my articles all down into 15 seconds.
Yeah, be sure to link them up at the end, by the way, in the comments.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really like the comments, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.